about my sister Lola. Okay. I joined a Zionist group. We were going to go to Palestine because we felt that if we had our own country, this would have never happened to us. It was someone would have spoken up, someone would have stopped it, and the Nazis wouldn't have dared to do it if we had our own country. So it made a lot of sense that Judea, the place from where we were dispersed, like 2,000 years ago, it's a logical place, Jerusalem, but that's where Judaism actually started. So it made a lot of sense, and I joined this group, and I was chosen to go to Palestine illegally. That's because the British would stop you. If they found out, they would stop the ships, and they would intern the people trying to go to Palestine. So we had to do it underground. And one of the group of people who were chosen to go to Palestine at the time, a young lady by the name of Rachel, she got sick. And they took her to the hospital in Ottilien, because Ottilien now became a hospital. They took her to the hospital, and I decided I'll go out and say goodbye to Rachel the night before we left to go to Palestine. We had several places that we had to stop on the way. So I went there, and Rachel was in a bed, and there were four other women in the same room. But I didn't pay attention to her, and I sat on Rachel's bed facing her, and I kept assuring her when she gets well, we'll come back and she'll rejoin us, because she was very upset that she was chosen and she couldn't leave with us at that time. I didn't pay attention to the women next to Rachel, but there was a woman next to Rachel who did pay attention to me. And after I left, I was sitting there for over an hour waiting for a bus to come pick us up. When I left, she asked, who was this young man with his wavy black hair? He reminded me so much of my brothers. So Rachel said, oh, his name is Benjamin. We went by our Hebrew name at that time. So, oh, Benjamin, I had a brother by the name of Ben, Bajnish, different names in Polish, Benek. Do you happen to have a picture of him? She says, of course, yes, we have a picture of the 10 of us who were chosen to leave to Palestine. And she shows the picture to this lady, and the lady screams out, that's my brother, he's alive, he's alive. Imagine, he was right here for almost 2 hours. And he's alive. So she was screaming, and her husband, who was in the next room, came running in, finding out what's happening. Anyway, she told him, and she swore on her husband. She says, please, you have to find my brother, I want him back. They found a cousin of mine in Feldafing, a neighboring town, and he was about my age. And when he came over to see my sister Lola, she swore on his head, you go and find my brother and don't come back without him. Tell him that his sister Lola is alive, she's in a hospital in Ottilien, and that her dying wish is to see her brother before she passes. Well, my cousin started to look, but he didn't know where to find me. So Rachel didn't know exactly where we were, but she remembered something Frankfurt. So my cousin comes to Frankfurt. He walks the street for hours. He didn't know where to find us. When he spots a group of young boys and girls walking, and they were speaking Yiddish, he figured, oh, that must be the right group. So he goes over to them and he asked them, do you know my cousin, Ben Lesser? And they did know me, but they were afraid to tell him because we were underground, not knowing who he was. They were afraid to tell him that, yes, they know where I am. But he felt that they did know, even though they denied it. So he told him, look, his sister is alive and she's in the hospital dying. Her dying wish is to see her brother. You can't, if you know him, please tell us. So they felt sorry for him and they did tell him, and they took him to me. Well, once they took him to me and he told me the story that Lola, my sister, is alive, I was happy, but then he tells me, he lowers the boom and he tells me the story is that she is in the hospital dying, and her dying wish is to see me. So of course, I decided to leave this organization, this group for now, and go see my dying sister. I had a friend of mine, we were like brothers, who we became like surrogate brothers after the war. His name was Moishi Opatovsky. And Moishi comes over, he says, what's happening? So I told him the story, my sister is dying, and I decided to leave this group. That was the night before we left for Marseille to board ship. And he says, Ben, you can't do that because you can't be replaced anymore. People would give anything to be in your place, but it's too late. Anyway, when I decided, regardless, I'm going to see my sister, he sort of walked away, turned around and walked away, which is a separate story by itself. But now I decided to go back, and my cousin and I went back by train to, we went back to the hospital in Ottilien, and we see Rachel is still in bed, and the next door to her is my sister Lola. And I walk up to her, and of course I embraced, and I noticed that she is with child. So I says, Lola, what's happening? Are you expecting a baby? She says, yes, Ben, I'm in my 9th month, and I am expecting a baby any day. I'm healthy, I'm not dying. I had to use these drastic measures, telling my cousin to go and tell you that I'm dying, because I felt otherwise I won't get you back in time. So in a way, I was sorry that I left, but on the other hand, here's my sister, she's alive and she's healthy. That made me feel so good, and she's going to have a child, so the family is going to start expanding again. So I decided, I was very happy about the fact that my sister and Lola, in fact, we stayed there in Ottilien for 2 or 3 days, and she needed to go to the hospital, and she expected the baby.